This Day in Sports History. This episode is brought to you by Sterling Soap Company. Fellas, you've heard the phrase, look good, feel good, right? But why not add smell good to that too? That's where Sterling Soap Company comes in. First, Sterling Soap is 100% natural and has a wide variety of bath soaps, shave soaps, beard balm, lotions, and cologne. Second, there's a scent just for you. How about burgundy? Yeah, it's more than a color. The Sterling Soap folks blend natural essential oils with hints of mahogany, golden amber, and sandalwood. Or how about D503, an intensely masculine scent inspired by Legend by Mont Blanc. And third, you will feel good about the price. For just a little more than you'd pay at the grocery store, Sterling Soap will leave you feeling clean, refreshed, and ready for whatever's next. Give Sterling Soap a try today. Visit sterlingsoap.com. And welcome back to another edition of This Day in Sports History, a member of the Sports History Network. It's November 12th, and on this day in 1990, it was the body bag game on Monday Night Football. Buddy Ryan was a pretty tough dude. Or maybe he was just surly. Well, actually, he was both. He famously sparred with Mike Ditka when he was defensive coordinator of the Chicago Bears. He came to blows on the sideline with Houston offensive coordinator Kevin Gilbride after the OC's calls kept putting Buddy's defense in bad spots. He was the mastermind behind the Chicago Bears' 46 defense that was a big reason Chicago won the Super Bowl in 1986. He brought that defense with him to Philadelphia as the head coach, and he put together a defense to be feared with guys like Jerome Brown, Clyde Simmons, and Reggie White. This was the Monday night game between the Washington Redskins and the Eagles at the Vet. In the lead-up to this one, Ryan told reporters that his team was going to beat up on the Skins so badly they'll have to be carted off in body bags. Yeah, he was pretty good with the one-liners as well. And the game lived up to Ryan's billing. Throughout the course of the night, 9 Washington players were injured and did not return, including starting quarterback Jeff Rutledge and backup QB Stan Humphries. Mark Rippon was already out due to an injury suffered earlier in the year, and third stringer Gary Hogeboom had not been activated for the game, which left the Skins scrambling for somebody to take snaps. Rookie running back Brian Mitchell was called on to play QB to finish out the game. The Eagles got 2 touchdowns from their defense, and they actually got a turnover to set up another one en route to a 28-14 win over Washington. The game did lead to a rule change. The NFL allowed for an emergency third quarterback that was not counted against the team's active roster. Now, if that player made an appearance prior to the fourth quarter, neither the starter or backup could re-enter the game. And here now to talk more about the body bag game and Buddy Ryan is Tommy Lawler, an expert on all things Philadelphia Eagles, a writer for Eagles Blitz, and you can find him on X as @LawlerNFL. Hey, Tommy, thanks for joining me.
Always my pleasure to talk the Eagles, and always my pleasure to talk with the great Steve White.
Appreciate it. All right, let's talk about the body bag game, November 12th, 1990. Monday Night Football at the Vet, Eagles 4-4 coming in. Washington not much better at 5-3, and the Skins had beaten the Eagles earlier in the season. Now, Eagles coach Buddy Ryan guarantees a win and more. So, was it simply bluster and bravado, or was there really something behind Buddy's confidence?
No, so it was a combination of both. It's a lot of bluster. You know, Buddy, every time he got a job, said, hey, you've hired a winner, we're going to win Super Bowls. There's a new sheriff in town, and just had this real huge attitude because he had done the great things with the 1985 Bears defense and they had won the Super Bowl. There was some confidence that he could back up those comments. You know, he was an assistant coach on the Jets when they won Super Bowl III and beat the Colts. You know, he had helped build the Purple People Eaters in Minnesota into a team that went to 4 Super Bowls. So he had great defenses and championships and great teams behind him. So there was an expectation he was going to do that in Philadelphia, and he had a real confidence. But he was the guy that, you know, so many coaches try to be quiet and dignified or whatever. Not Buddy. Buddy was a showman at heart. He wanted to tell you what he was going to do and then go do it. To him, that made it all the more fun.
And of course, when you have the front four like this 1990s edition of the Eagles had, well, I mean, I guess that is a kind of a confidence builder.
No, absolutely. Reggie White, to me, he was the best player, the best defensive player of football. Others would argue Lawrence Taylor. Either way, two amazing guys. And then he had a disruptive player named Jerome Brown on the inside who was athletic, explosive, a defensive tackle who could rack up 10 sacks. They had Mike Golick and Mike Pitts who kind of rotated the other defensive tackle position. And then Clyde Simmons, who quietly had a great career, had finished with 120 sacks in his career, borderline Hall of Fame type guy, and who was a late-round pick out of Western Carolina, right? So he built this defensive line that could come in and just dominate against the run, and then, God forbid, when the quarterback went back to pass, he was going to pay the price because those guys could really get after the quarterback.
So Buddy's prediction came true. 9 Redskin players had to leave the game with injuries, including starting quarterback Jeff Rutledge, backup QB Stan Humphries, and that led to running back Brian Mitchell had to take some snaps for the Redskins in this game. So it was a pretty wild one, right?
Yeah, no, it was a wild game. So 3 Redskins were carted off, taken off on a cart. One guy was taken off on a stretcher, right? And another guy was kind of walked off. So just an absolutely, it's one thing for guys to hobble off, and now they go to the blue medical tent. Back then that didn't exist. But when you see guys getting carried off like this, it was just crazy. There was a guy with that broken leg, somebody with significant concussion. The quarterbacks, both guys got knocked out. So the starting quarterback was actually out for the game, Mark Rippon, right? So they were going with their second, third string quarterbacks. They knocked both those guys out, and when they knocked out Rutledge, you say Wes Hopkins drove him into the ground, and as Stan Humphries, Reggie White was tackling him, and his leg just kind of buckled under White's weight, and so then they turned to Brian Mitchell. Oddly, Brian Mitchell they were down 28-7 at that point. Mitchell led Washington on a touchdown drive. So they ended up losing the game 20-14 because they put him in. He had played quarterback in college, so it wasn't totally foreign to him. But watching him play quarterback was entertaining for everybody.
I just can't see this flying in today's NFL. In light of Bountygate in New Orleans in 2012, a statement like Buddy made and then 9 players getting knocked out would result in allegations, investigations, fines, suspensions.
Oh, yeah, no, the 1980s and early 90s in pro football was like the old Wild West. You could say all kinds of crazy things. You could have coaches arguing. You had just crazy stuff going on in the field. The game was extremely violent because we didn't understand what concussions were or what concussions are. And so when you saw a guy get a nasty shot to the head, you said, hey, that's good, tough defense. If that guy's crossing, if it's a receiver crossing the middle, you got to make him pay. And your job was to go there and knock the crap out of him and be brutal. Now that you understand that when you do that, you're affecting that guy's brain and the rest of his life, it's good that they legislated that stuff out. At the time, when you and I were football fans in our college days, we didn't know that, so we just thought it was good, tough defense. And that was the mentality in the league and around the sport. So it's a good thing that's been cleaned up. Yeah, Buddy Ryan's teams would not have, he would have lasted for about a month in today's world because they would have suspended him, fired him, banned the team, changed the sport, put him in jail, something, because he just had so much attitude. And the way he got his players to play so aggressively, even back then, there was people who said he went too far. So if they were saying that back then, in today's world, wouldn't last for a second.
That's Tommy Lawler, a writer for Eagles Blitz, and you can find him on X at LawlerNFL. Are you a hockey fan? Then you'll love Eric Zweig's new book, Hockey Hall of Fame True Stories 2. It's a treasure trove of untold tales, bizarre incidents, and captivating trivia that will leave even the most devoted puckhead astounded. The intense rivalries, epic showdowns, and historic clashes that shaped the NHL's early years, it's all in there. Zweig uncovers the true stories that helped shape the sport, ensuring that you will never look at hockey the same way again. Check out Hockey Hall of Fame True Stories 2 on Amazon or wherever fine books are sold. So what else happened on this day in sports history? Well, on this day in 1892, William Pudge Heffelfinger became the first professional football player. Pudge had played football at Yale, and he'd been an All-American guard in 1891 on a team that had gone 13-0. The Allegheny Athletic Association reached out to Heffelfinger to see if he'd like to play in a game against the Pittsburgh Athletic Club. They sweetened the deal a good bit when they offered him $500 to suit up. That's the equivalent to about $16,000 in today's money. This is the first recorded time that money had actually been paid to somebody to play a game, and it paid dividends. He scored the game's only touchdown in a win for Allegheny. Other teams started to follow suit, adding a paid player or two to the roster. Pittsburgh became the first team to actually offer the first professional contract when they signed a player the next year to play for the season. On this day in 1920, Kennesaw Mountain Landis became the first commissioner of baseball. Landis replaced a three-man commission that had been in place since 1903. The 16 major league owners met in Chicago, and after 3 hours, selected Landis. One caveat was that Landis could continue his job as a jurist on the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Illinois, a post he'd been appointed to in 1905 by President Teddy Roosevelt. Landis's appointment was a direct result of the 1919 Chicago Black Sox scandal and the rumors that continued to swirl about the World Series being fixed. Landis was given dictatorial powers over both the owners and the players, and he used those powers to control baseball for the next 25 years. Of course, his first ruling came the following year with the lifetime ban of the 8 Chicago players implicated in the Black Sox scandal. He was later emboldened when he suspended the most popular player in the game, Babe Ruth, for violating a rule prohibiting players from that season's pennant winners to barnstorm in the offseason. When Ruth returned from his 4-month suspension in 1922, he was booed by fans, a tacit approval of Landis's draconian measure. He would also keep the sport closed off to black players, upholding an informal ban against black players put in place in 1884. It was not until after Landis's death in 1944 that the discussion about bringing black players into the game was resumed. On this day in 1985, it was a heartbreaking day for the Philadelphia Flyers as goaltender Pelle Lindbergh was removed from life support following a fiery car crash 2 days earlier. Lindbergh was the reigning Vezina Trophy winner, given to the best goaltender in the NHL, in the early morning hours of the 10th after attending a team party following the Flyers' 5-3 win over the Boston Bruins. Lindbergh was driving his Porsche when it skidded on wet pavement and crashed into a stone wall in Voorhees, New Jersey, less than a mile from the Flyers' practice rink. He suffered severe brain damage and a spinal cord injury. When he arrived at the hospital, he was listed as brain dead and put on life support with no hope for recovery. 2 friends riding with him survived the crash with minor injuries. In about a third of the time that it will take me to read this short hockey feat from this day, Esa Tikkanen could have scored 2 goals. On this day in 1988, Tikkanen scored not just 2 goals, but 2 shorthanded goals in 12 seconds. His first came when he picked up the puck in the neutral zone, skated past the blue line, fired a shot that Toronto Maple Leaf goaltender Al Bester blocked, but the rebound came right back to Tikkanen's stick, and he put it over Bester's glove hand into the net. Moments later, after the Oilers won the faceoff, Jari Kurri found Tikkanen in front of the net, and he slid it past Bester for number 2, 12 seconds removed from the first one. And that's the fastest that any player has scored 2 shorthanded goals in NHL history. And time now for today's non-sports fun fact. In 1518, in what is now Strasbourg, France, there was a mysterious outbreak of what's been called the dancing plague. Those afflicted danced uncontrollably and unwillingly for days on end, some dying by exhaustion. Over a 4-month period, there were about 400 documented cases of the mysterious ailment before it dissipated. Explanations for it range from demonic possession to the consumption of rye bread. That's all I've got for you today. Thanks for checking out this episode. Click subscribe so you'll know the episode is waiting for you when you get ready for your morning commute or your daily walk around the park. Have a great day, and I'll see you back here tomorrow with another edition of This Day in Sports History. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.